anyway. So first of all, you're here. You're all here because you are problem solvers, you are creative thinkers, you are hard workers, you are dedicated public servants. You believe in our local government, in public education, and because of those values, you are thinking of stepping forward to run for office or to help somebody else run for office, or maybe you're thinking somewhere down the road, there's got to be some place that I'm going to find where I want to fit in and make a little bit more difference. Some of you may have just come off of an active part of the Biden campaign. Whatever the motivation, it may just be this sunny year that we have in front of us. Your interest in stepping forward. So thank you. That is really what makes our democracy strong and allows us to elect people like Joe Biden. But I firmly believe it starts at the grassroots. So I also like to say that because this is our third time doing it, we have a handbook to go with it. We're still working out some kinks. It's always a work in progress. So I like to say it's the guinea pig special. It's going to be good enough. And if it's not good enough, please, you can get your money back. So of course that's a joke, but we're doing the best we can. We're going to now just have introductions all around. I'm going to introduce myself first because I always forget, and then Ava will introduce herself and then she'll call on people around. So I'm going to give my name, Betsy Whitman, where I live, which is Center County, Pennsylvania, and I live in Patton Township, and that's in the state of Pennsylvania. So you can, if you're not from Pennsylvania, give your state. And the office I'm interested in running is actually supervisor, because I will be running for township supervisor. And then I'm going to give other introductions at the end. So I'm just giving my name, where I live, and what office I'm running for.
All right. Thank you, Betsy. So my name is Ava Bosco. I am the Executive Director for the Center County Democrats. Today I'm coming from Philadelphia. I live in Germantown. Super happy to be here today with you guys. Not planning to run for office, but I'm excited to be supporting individuals who would like to run for office. So thank you all for coming.
Rock and roll, as you would say.
Yes.
So I wanted to finish with my introduction. I'm the Vice Chair of the Center County Democrats. I actually cut my political teeth in Montgomery County, so I'm not as familiar with Philadelphia politics, but obviously that was the area in which I learned my passion for politics. And I also have a passion for grassroots organizing, and in particular for recruiting people to run for local offices. So that would be school board, council, and supervisor. Also at the county level, we have commissioners and jury commissioners and so on. What's I going to say? And so those of you who are jumping on for running statewide, this is very exciting. This is our first statewide candidate to jump on. So some of the tactics that we use for local races are going to be very, very similar to statewide races, but also somewhat different. So I know you understand that. The exciting thing for me about having these trainings, this being our third this year, this year, in a week, is the outreach that we're getting, or the response we're getting from people running for different races, running in different counties or even different states. I want to give a call out to New York, and then I know we have some like Clinton County, Virginia, Loudoun County, and I will give a specific heads up for people out of state that some of the particulars of one part of running for office, which I will be covering, and that is called petition circulation, are going to could be very different in your state. We did have somebody from Texas, for example. Texas does not circulate petitions to get on the ballot. So with that introduction, I'm going to give an overview. Today we're going to be talking basically about 3 areas to get on the ballot. So I like to say it's as simple as 1, 2, 3. but nothing is really simple. We're just in our mind thinking of it that way. The first and foremost decision process is why am I running? You know, what has brought you here? And what do you hope to get out of this position? It is the most important part. I love the fact that some of you are not decided on a particular race, but you're here for the bigger picture and the long run. I always say you can never, ever, ever start too early thinking about running for office. Even though that is the most important part, we're actually going to save it to the end. So now that I've said it's the most important part and it's number one, we're going to save it because it's also the most open-ended. And we also have several sitting officials who will be jumping on the call to help us talk through some of that process. Also, once you hear the details, because there's a lot of detail and there's a lot involved, that is going to color partly some of your decision for running. The second part that we'll be talking about is basically, how do I get on the ballot? And the third part is, how do I win? So Ava's going to take the how do I win or campaign 101. I'm going to do how we get on the ballot. And then I will come back and talk about number one. And we will have our elected officials come in and we'll open up for conversation. Any questions that you have as we're going along, put in the chat. Ava's very good at reading those. I'm not so good at reading those, but I am confident that we'll get to all those questions. Okay, so getting on the ballot. This is where I bring my audio visual. And I also might say that I am delighted that Ava and I were able to pull together a handbook that accompanies this presentation. In the past, without COVID, it's been a sort of dog and pony show. People are in the in one room, we have coffee and donuts, we're jumping around, we're using audio visual, we're handing out candidate lit as example. We can't do that now. But one of my favorite audio visuals is my favorite piece of paper in this whole process. It's called a nomination petition. I know you can't see it there, but you will have an example in your handbook. The nomination petition, and the reason I like an audio visual is I often fold it up and carry it like this. And when I'm going door to door, I put it on a clipboard. And the reason I like to show you the folding up is that even though it's an official document, that's part of the democratic process, it is pretty durable. I fold it up, stick it in my pocket when I'm shopping, at the movies, whatever, walking down the street. And if I see somebody I know who knows a Democrat, I whip it out and ask them to sign it. Okay. So let me just flip to my notes here so I don't get ahead of myself. All right. The petition, as I said, is an official document. It's pretty cool. It will go on file in your county elections office. What I have here is a copy. It is your way of getting on the ballot. You are asking for permission from your fellow Democrats to get on the ballot. You need a certain number of signatures, depending on the office that you're running for. For supervisor, for council, you need 10. For county commissioner, you need 250. For statewide, you need, and Shirley, you can help me out there. It's hundreds or maybe 1,000, and then you need 100 in each county to be a filing county. So the larger the geographic area of your race, the greater the number of signatures you're going to need. Now, there are two exceptions this year for municipal races in who you can get signatures from. I started out by saying you're getting permission from Democratic voters to be on the Democratic primary ballot. If you're running for school board, you, as a Democrat, want to get on the Democratic ballot, but you also want to get on the Republican ballot. The school board is what's called a cross-filed race. That is an honest attempt to make it a nonpartisan race. To get on the Republican ballot, you need to find a Republican who happens to be a fellow citizen, a friend, a relative, perhaps, and ask if that friend or relative will circulate a Republican signature for you. So that Republican circulator is going to be asking permission from registered Republicans to get on the ballot, to get you, a Democrat, on the Republican ballot. The second exception to requiring, for a Democrat requesting only Democratic signatures, is the magisterial district judge race. And that's for this time. There are other races, a court of common pleas judge race, which is at the county level, that's run in another year. So we're not having any run this year. That race can also have circulate Republican petitions. Okay. So if you have any questions about circulating with Republicans, that would be especially now for school board races. I think we have school board candidates on, yes, this training, potential school board candidates. If you have any questions, you can contact me or Ava, or if you're living in another county in Pennsylvania, you can contact your county chair of the Democratic Party within your particular county, and you can get some help there. So how do you get a nomination petition? In Center County, you go up to the elections office and pick up a candidate's packet. We have the address and the contact information, the website and a phone number for our Center County elections office right in the handbook. Those of you in another county, just Google your elections office, you can get that contact info. I obviously recommend that everyone in this era of COVID contact the elections office before you go up to pick up that packet, so that you're not going up there unnecessarily. They may only take a certain number of people coming each day, or they may ask for appointments to reduce the number of people that are in the office at any one time. So that's and I'm going to go through a lot of nuts and bolts. This is a lot of information. And again, I emphasize that all of this is in your handbook. I was a teacher in many past lives, and once a teacher, you're always a teacher. I've also a background in psychology. So I understand that people learn in different modes. You also learn through multiple passes through the same information. So some people learn orally, some people learn reading the written word, others learn with audio visual. So hence, I'm going to be giving you the details through your handbook. All right. So you, before you circulate this petition, you are going to need to put on the petition information about yourself. There are very explicit directions in your candidate's packet, but about what information goes on and how that information goes on, where it goes on. Some of it's very obvious, things like name, okay. But I wanted to give you a couple of tips when you're filling out this petition. One, it is okay to use your nickname. I am Betsy Whitman. My given name is Elizabeth. If I want people to vote for me, I want people to vote for the me that they know, and that's Betsy. So it's perfectly fine to put that down. You can also use initials. If somebody calls you TJ, you can, be TJ. I could be TJ Whitman if I wanted to. In places you will be asked for ward or district. That refers to if an elected geographic area is divided into specific wards. It doesn't refer to where you live. I know Philadelphia, I believe, has wards where people live. In Center County, most people are not running in an election that involves a ward. However, if you're in Bellefonte running, there are certain wards in that borough. It's a municipality, but it's also a borough. And there's one school board. Oh, and Ferguson Township also has wards if you're running for supervisor there. So for the most part, you don't have to worry about ward or district. If you have a question, you can ask at the elections office, or again, you can ask your county chair or some of your county active Democrats. Another thing I want to point out is for people running for municipal elections, on the back of the ballot, there is what's called the waiver of expense account reporting. We recommend that each candidate for a municipal level sign this. The waiver states that you pledge not to spend more than $250 on your campaign. Okay, it doesn't mean that if you see yard signs with bells and whistles and you want to buy them and they cost more than $250, that you can't do that. If you do spend more than $250, you just simply need to get another form at the elections office and say, I'm releasing myself from my waiver because I'm going to spend more money than the $250. The reason we suggest this is it's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of picky information that you need to start keeping track of once you spend more than $250. Not so much because you're spending that much, but because it's likely, well, that's one reason, but it's also likely that you're receiving contributions. The Federal Elections Commission has set up very specific rules about campaign contributions. That is for our protection. That is for the protection of the American voter. If you are an American candidate, it is a pain in the butt to keep track of all that. However, it is for the public good. So we want you to do that. And even though it's not fun, you know there's a reason for it. But because most people running for municipal office don't need more than $250, we recommend that you don't do that. It's just one less hassle. I also might add that even if you don't spend more than $250, if you do accept donations from a friend, they want to chip in 25, someone else wants to chip in 25, you actually need to, well, you can't sign that waiver. Well, actually, I'm not quite sure about that, but if you accept money, you're going to need to fill out 2 other forms that are also included in your candidate's packet. Actually, there's 3 other forms. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but I'll do that. The other forms in your candidate's packet are going to be a statement of financial interests. You have to fill that out whether you spend more than $250 or not. If you want to go beyond that $250 spending limit, you will also need to fill out the political committee registration statement and the authorization for a political committee to receive funds. All of those forms would be in your packet. All of those forms come with instructions. And again, your Democratic County active people, your the Democratic committee, your chair, your vice chair, others are at the ready to help you out. So let's go back to petitions. Let's go back to signatures themselves. So the fun part for me is getting the signatures. This is the first step of your campaign. You are reaching out to your constituents. You are having a conversation about who you are and why you're running and what your issues are. And you are also listening to your constituents and finding out, you know, what's important to them. Those conversations will be important not only in how you run your campaign and issues that you talk about, they will also be critical in how you serve in that office once you're elected. So this petition signature signing, a lot of people say, well, I got my signature, I have my minimum signatures. It's so much more than getting the official go ahead to get on the ballot. It is an opportunity to build community, to build your campaign, to get to know your constituents. It is, as I like to say, one of the best kept secrets in organizing, any kind of organizing. So even if you're on this call, this meeting, and you're not quite certain that you want to run for office, jump on to somebody else's campaign. Find somebody who's running for office and offer to carry their petition. That gives you an opportunity to get to meet people in your neighborhood or people in your larger community. And it gets you comfortable with the idea of door knocking, this sense of building community, and may make it easier for you down the road should you want to run for office at some time. it is an unbelievable experience, this petition circulation. If you, well, a couple of rules and regulations, I'll kind of filter those throughout. The petition circulation period in Pennsylvania is limited to 3 weeks. So it's kind of, can be kind of a race. It also usually encompasses Valentine's Day. This year it does not. I'll get to the dates in a minute. But if you think of Valentine's Day as a sort of a place mark for placeholder for petition circulation, 1, it's cold, 2, it could be snowing. So if you are circulating this petition, if you actually go and knock on doors, you're going to get the sympathy vote right away. You're out in the snowstorm, you whip out this petition, and people are going to be very impressed that you've come to their door in the snow, in the cold. And I've literally trudged in snowstorms, and people have remembered it. It's pretty fun. Let's see. Yeah, if you, okay, so there's actually a couple of strategies to circulating for petitions. There is I think I talked about the minimum number of signatures. I did. For municipal races, it's 10. We always recommend, however, that you get 50% more than what is the required minimum. So 10 signatures, 50% more of that would be a total of 15. We'll talk about COVID because that impinges upon your plan to circulate. So this year in particular, I understand if you want to stick to the strict minimum or the strict recommended minimum, which would be 15 for a municipal race, because there's some scary stuff going on out there. I'll talk about the COVID in a minute, but I just want to address if you only do the 15. You, especially, well, actually I'll talk about COVID. Sorry, I'm again getting ahead of myself. So if you're concerned about COVID, what you can do is once you have figured out once you have filled out your petition with all of your personal information, you can make photocopies of that signature, and you want to photocopy it so that it is exactly as it appears in your packet. And that is, we use a term calling top to top. So you want the top of the front also to match up with the top of the back, and have all your information filled out. You can then hand this photocopied petition without any signatures on it. You can hand it to, let's say you have 5 families, each of whom might have 2, maybe 3 Democrats in the household. They have either teenage kids or kids in their 20s or extended family. That's going to be your 3-Dem household. So if you circulate those or exchange those with 5 other families, you can, including your own household, get 2 or 3, and 5 other families. You can get anywhere from, say, that's 6 petitions twice, so that's 12 to 18 signatures, and you're covered. So it is perfectly fine, as I said, to photocopy the signature and give it to another household. It's also perfectly fine to photocopy the signature and give it to somebody who wants to go out and knock doors and get 15 or 20 signatures for you. Okay, let's talk specifically about COVID. If you do go door to door, we recommend, obviously, you wear a mask. Duh. In Center County, we recently purchased or are purchasing a set of face shields, and we're going to offer them to people who might want them at cost. It's about $3 per face shield. Face shields don't offer much in the way of additional protection if you're outdoors. It's the aerosol spread that is the most potent way that COVID spreads. And because you're out of doors, there's quite a bit of circulation. So the probability of contamination or submission is very low. However, the optics of having a face mask may make people at the door feel more comfortable receiving a petition from you and signing it. Other things that you can do in the era of COVID are carrying a bottle of hand sanitizer, carrying sanitizing wipes. You can carry a bag of pens and that have not been used, and get people to pick out a clean pen and then deposit the dirty one in the other bag. You can ask people to use their own pen. There are many suggest many ways that you can go about that. You can wear gloves. So I know we're well aware of that. You're well aware of all the options that you can employ. We as organizers in the Center County Democrats also fully recognize that it needs to be your comfort zone when you're circulating your petition, your comfort zone with COVID especially. So keep that in mind. Okay, now, how am I going to know if I'm getting Democrats to sign my petition? Many of us travel in, or well, at least certainly me and Ava and some people attending this are kind of Democratic nerds or political nerds, and we know a lot of Democrats, it would be no problem. But for people starting out or new to a community, you just might not know. You might suspect, or you might have, you've seen a Biden-Harris sign on somebody's lawn, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a registered Democrat. Thank heavens for registered Republicans who voted for Biden-Harris, and so on and so forth. But it is perfectly fine for you to walk around your neighborhood or go to your office if you're having non-virtual work hours, whatever, carry it to the grocery store, whatever, with your maybe your hand sanitizer, and ask people who you think are Democrats to sign it. Or you can ask them, oh, are you a registered Democrat? I'd love for you to sign my petition. That way is fine. But I will say that you'd be surprised that many people don't know how they're registered. They may think they're registered as a Democrat, but they forgot to change over from being a Republican. They may think they're a Democrat, but they were an independent and never changed, so on and so forth. So if you what I call that Democrats on the fly, if you collect signatures that way, you want to make sure you get at least, I would say, 20 signatures to make sure that you have at least 10 that are actually registered Democrats. Two other ways to get signatures. One is two other ways to get them in with a list. And one is the cheapest way, which I'm going to talk about first. And the other one, it does cost a little bit, but is really what I call the Cadillac of lists. Okay. So the cheapest way is when you pick up your candidate's packet at your election office to ask for a list of registered voters in the district for which you're running. They may give it, I think they can give it to you actually in a paper list. In fact, I know they can because I've gotten one from Center County. They might give it to you in the form of a disc. If it's for a small district, they might be able to send it to you electronically. Okay. That list is in the form of an Excel file, a data sheet Excel file. So those of you who know Excel files, or if you have friends who know, or Ava will talk about your kitchen cabinet, bringing friends onto your campaign. So if you have someone who knows about Excel files, you know that you can sort them. You can sort by street, you can sort by last name. One of the pieces of information that you get from your county elections office is the age and the registration party of the voters. So you can sort by Democrats, you can sort by age. Age is important if you're going out in the middle of the day when a lot of people might be at work, at least in a normal year. And you want to get people at home, you'll probably want a list of people who are 65 and older. Okay. So those are some manipulations that you can do with the data that you get from your county elections office, and that information is free. It is free to anybody who wants to run for office, and it is a complete list of everybody registered at that moment in the county. Now, the third way, and the way that we recommend that those of us who've been in organizing in the Democrats or progressive groups for a number of years get very excited about, the Cadillac of lists, and it's called Vote Builder. It's also called Voter Access Network, which is abbreviated to VAN. So as Ava and I present going forward, we will refer to Vote Builder or VAN. And what we're talking about is this Cadillac of data of registered voters. It's really it's a database. It's not just an Excel file. It's extremely powerful. Ava's going to talk about some of the ways that it can be sorted or be harnessed to produce lists. But for now, I'll just say for your petitions, what you can do with this van or vote builder system is print out a list of all Democrats who live on your street. You can sort of, I like to say spy. You can find out if your neighbor across the street is really a Democrat or a Republican. And you think, well, if they're a Republican, I can't get their signature, but I can get their vote. So, and it doesn't make them a bad person. It just means when you talk to them, you're going to talk to them with a slightly different message or way of approaching. So, but for petition purposes, you'll probably want to get a list of all Democrats. And like I say, you might want to do it by age or so on. So those are the 3 ways that you can find out who are the Democrats to get on your ballot. Talk about Democrats on the fly. Okay. So strategies for getting your signatures. So I talked about petition circulation as the best kept secret. I'm running for supervisor. I need 10 signatures. I absolutely should get 15. I will try and get 30 or 40 because it's my way to reach out to people and have a one-on-one conversation about some issues that I'm working on or they might have a concern about. So here's what I do. And this, by the way, is particularly important if you are running in, these strategies are important. If you're running in a highly contested race where you know your opponent is gonna, both of you are gonna come out of the gate, you know, ready to campaign. One way to get a heads up or a leg up on your campaign is to do what I call a petition blitz. So get way more than you need. We have somebody running for jury commissioner in Center County. She needs 250. We plan to get 250 that first day to turn in, and we plan to actually get 1,000 over the course of her campaign because it's her way to reach out. So one of the strategies that I use is I have a number of friends who I know are Democrats and in fact who have signed for me before on other petitions. I call them up or I email them and I set up appointments for the evening. I don't want to go out and door knock myself at dark, and nobody wants to answer the doorbell at night. At least I don't. Sometimes who's answering my doorbell? You know, it's usually people knock. Friends who come over like, doorbell, did I do something wrong or something? So in an evening, I can get, if I go to 5 doors and I go to all what I call double D doors, I can get 10 signatures probably in an hour. And if I do 2 hours, that's 20 signatures. So because I'm a nerd and I like to get them that way, they add up quickly. But, and again, I emphasize also that you can have other people carry your petitions. So I already talked about quickly the fact that you, if you're knocking a weekday and people are working, you want to knock for people who are over 65 and so on. Okay. Super. So now I'm actually going to talk about, that was the fun part, but now I'm going to talk about the picky part. One of the reasons that we strongly suggest that you get 50% more of the signatures that are required is that people are going to make mistakes. Mistakes are going to happen, however you want to phrase it. The rules for signatures are very picky because, again, we want to guard against people getting illegitimate signatures, people not being smart about getting their signatures. So they're very specific rules. Also, if your signatures are challenged, the people at the elections office need to be able to identify every single person who has signed your petition as a living, breathing, registered voter, Democrat, in your district. In the case of, say, a jury commissioner, the district would be all of Center County. In the case of a supervisor, the district would be all of Patton Township. So you have to have the name, signature, house number, and the borough, or I should say the municipality in which you live, and then the date. So I'm going to go very quickly through these rules and regulations. Again, they are all in your book. You're going to hear them from me. You're going to read them in the book. Somebody else is going to tell you about them. And you'll do your best, and most of your signatures will be good. Okay, so one of the first rules is you can only circulate between February 16th, that's the start date this year, and March 9th. And I will say at this point, you do not want to wait until March 9th to get all your signatures. You certainly don't want to wait to turn it in either. So you can't circulate before then. And there's a column on this petition for the date. So if you have an early signature, that'll be knocked off. Okay, also, we've talked about the party at the circulation with the exception of school board and magisterial district judges. How many petitions can a person sign? If you are a candidate for school board, the chances are likely that we hope that there are going to be, in the case of the State College Area School District, that there are going to be 4 candidates running for 4 positions. You might go up to a door, knock on it, and say, I'm running for school board, will you sign my petition? And the voter is going to say, I already signed a petition for school board. So your job is to say, great, thank you. You can sign up to 4 petitions because you will be able to vote for 4 people on the ballot. So the number of petitions that a person can sign in a particular, for a particular area of candidate is the number of votes that that voter will have on the primary day. And since you can vote for all 4 school board, at different school board, 4 of them, you can sign 4 petitions. You want to observe the signature as it's written. You want to carry voter registration forms. If you have a voter registration form, I was going to say we've got that information on how to get a voter registration form. You can download it from the Department of State. You can register somebody to vote that day, and they can sign your petition on that same day. Now, as for the particulars of each signature, one of the biggest rules is no ditto marks. No ditto marks, none, no ditto marks. You'd be amazed at how often that happens. When I circulate, I have a sign on my petition that says no ditto marks. Okay. Under place of residence, and this is a little tricky. So that would be your, obviously the voter's address, street address. It is the place of residences would be the next to last column. What they need to put down is their municipality. Now, a lot of people may not know their municipality. It's fine, but they do know their mailing address. For me, my address is 133 Sandy Ridge Road, State College, Pennsylvania. But wait, I can't write State College because I live in the municipality of Patton. Most voters, most people have this knee-jerk reaction to writing out their mailing address when they fill out their identifying information. This is the one case in which they need to know their township. So what I do is I'm knocking on a door. I tell people right away, you live in Patton Township. I need for you to write the word Patton right here and do that first. And then they can go back and fill in the rest of it. And when they get to the place where they might automatically put down a state college, they see they already have Patton. Another area of great importance, again, as I mentioned, is the date. I put a little arrow on here that has the current date. If any of the dates are out of order, signatures can be removed. Okay. One thing that I didn't write, and I realized we didn't cover in other survey training, you can only get signatures from voters within your district. So if you're running for borough council in, say, Bellefonte in Center County, you can't get somebody who lives in State College to sign your petition. You need to get permission from the people who live in the borough of Bellefonte. And in the case of like a school district where there's multiple townships and you don't know the borders of the particular school district, you need to ask people. That is, if you do not have a list from either the elections office or from VAN, you need to ask people, you know, what county, what municipality do you live in? So that's really critical. Now, I think that's about it, except, oops, I just jumped around here. A couple of things. When you turn in your petitions, okay, you've finished your petitions, you've got your number, hopefully you've gotten, 30, or maybe at least you've gotten your 15 that we recommend. you want to make a photocopy of those. Those signatures, those are your first voters. Well, they haven't voted for you exactly, but they are very likely to vote for you. So you're going to want to be able to contact those people in what we call get out the vote time of your campaign. And that's something Ava is going to talk about. So make a photocopy before you turn it in. Let's see. And as I said, don't wait until the last day to turn it in. You don't want to get hung up in any long lines. They also, right. And you also don't want to wait till the last day, because if you have some bad signatures or somebody looks at it and says, oh, you know, everybody's got the wrong date on there, you might have to go out and get those signatures again, or get another 10 signatures to make sure that you can meet that minimum in time. And I also want to mention very quickly other ways to get on the ballot. There is a way that if you miss the deadline to file your petitions, you can write a write-in campaign for the primary. If you're writing a write-in campaign, you want to get as many people as you can and ask them directly or through an email to write you in on the Democratic ballot in the primary. You want to spell out your name specifically. I'm Whitman with W-H-I-T-M-A-N, not W-I-T-M-A-N. So it's critical you get the right spelling. You would also want to stand at a poll or have volunteers stand at other polls if your district has multiple polls with a small piece of literature. It can be a business card size with your name spelled out. Say, can you write in Betsy Whitman for supervisor this time on the Democratic ballot? I will also add, you can ask Republicans to write you in on the Republican side if you have Republican friends, or if you're standing at the poll, they happen to know you, they know you're, like there's no Democratic potholes and Republican potholes, they'll vote for you for supervisor. You also want to make sure you hand them a card with the correct spelling of your name. Another way to get on the ballot is circulating something called nomination papers. I'm not going to go into details now. It's similar to petition papers. You'll probably want to contact your county Democratic committee and help doing that. You can also run a write-in campaign in the general election. That's much harder than running one in the primary, but it is possible. With that, I finished the details of petition, and I'm going to turn it over to Ava. Unless, Ava, were there any questions that we want to answer right now, or you want to wait till the end?
So I addressed them all in the chat, so awesome. We're all set to move on.
Perfect.
So thank you everyone for paying attention so far. Now we're gonna pivot, which is once you've got on the ballot, you might have a potential challenge, which is that you might have an opponent. If you happen to have an opponent going into the primary, that's something we're not covering today, but if you have questions about it, please let us know. But today we're gonna assume that there are two options that might occur. You get on the ballot, you go through the primary, and as you head towards the general, you have no opponent. Or the alternative is that you do have an opponent in a different party. So if you do not have an opponent in the opposing party, we would highly encourage you to continue to campaign as though you do, because it's really important to engage with the community. This is a great way to build your coalition, and it's also a great way to expand your platform so that you understand what issues your constituents do care about the most. You want to have that presence before you become elected. It would be a mistake not to do so. For a lot of you, I imagine you will have opponents, so you will be campaigning. So we're gonna go through some of the fundamentals of your field program, some of our tips and tricks for making it to November. So one of the first things that you're going to want to do is rally your support team, or what we might also call a kitchen cabinet. So your kitchen cabinet includes a number of people between 3 and 7 people that you members or friends or colleagues, people that are going to tell you the truth. They're going to keep you tethered to the ground, and they are going to help you when you need assistance in getting your campaign off the ground and finishing it in its final days. So a few things that they can do for you is helping you craft your campaign message, writing and designing your literature, help with petition circulation or door knocking, and standing at the polls on election day. Next thing you're going to want to do is crafting your message. So your message should be between 2 and 5 words. It should be positive. It should capture some of your personal qualities and the essence of what your campaign is about. So you're going to want to use this message over and over in the literature that you create, the conversations that you have, in the speeches that you give at events. So some examples that we have for you is change we can all believe in, a fresh perspective, the time is now, and find common good. When you've figured out what your message will be, you can move on to the next step, which is designing and printing your literature. So you're going to want to design and carry literature around with you when you're knocking doors. A few things you want to keep in mind is that your message should appear prominently and it should drive the content on your literature. You want to use 3 to 4 bullet points to list your qualifications and the issues that you're running on. You'll want to include a photo of yourself or with your family or with your pets. For literature examples, you can look in the appendix. We have examples for different offices. Some people, if you're running for Borough Council, Township Supervisor, or School Board, you can get together and do a slate. So you can all pitch in and do a set of literature together that's more cost effective, and it encourages voting up and down the ticket. This is something you would have to coordinate with your fellow candidates or incumbents. You can print this literature from home as needed, but we do suggest printing out from hotcards.com. You might want to talk to your county committee to see if getting the union bug would be important. That is an option that you can utilize on Hotcards. Additionally, you can design this content on Word or canva.com. Canva is a really great option for templates that are already pre-made for you for creating different kinds of content. And I'm going to put those in the chat real quick. After you've created your literature, the next thing you'll want to do is write 3 speeches. So they will all revolve around the same message. They just vary in length. The first is your elevator speech. This is 1 minute. Your second will be your door knocking speech. That's 2 minutes. And then your third can be 5 to 10 minutes for a fundraising event. Ideally, you want to memorize all of these. At the beginning of our packet, we have a step-by-step where you can set up your personal story or your campaign message and practice that over and over. These are the fundamentals for your campaign. This is going to help you be prepared for whatever comes your way throughout the coming months. As you have set up all the bases for your campaign, the next thing we'll want to focus on is the field. So one of the first things you'll want to do, depending on the competitiveness of your campaign, is to calculate your win number. So what that means is you can calculate a few things when you look at data from past elections, the number of registered voters in your district. And what you can do is calculate how many votes you need to win your race. And then you can also calculate what we call a vote goal, which is you've already won the race, but you want to show that your coalition is large. So you want to get X amount of votes more to show that you have a coalition and that you are, chosen by the people. So you want to set up the basic win number and the vote goal so that you do have a goal that's above the basic amount of votes that you need. What you'll also want to do is consider, what is the turnout going to look like? So we do have some math calculations that are broken down for you, so you can look at past municipal elections. You want to look at specific elections that you would be running in that aren't presidential, that aren't midterm elections when there's high turnout, which inflates the number of votes that you'll likely anticipate within a municipal election year. These are just great ways to have a baseline and an expectation for how many people will turn out on election day and how many you need to vote for you. Once you've identified the number of votes you need, you want to think about who can you count on to turn out. So once you've calculated that win number, you want to break down the numbers to see where do I need votes from and who do I need them from. So we have a little graphic that shows you people that always vote, people that rarely vote, and people that always vote. And then we break it up into 3 categories. The first is they always vote Democratic. They are swing voters. And the third is always vote Republican. I see we have a question in the chat that I'm going to refer to. So if you want to see the information on how to calculate the math for your race, it's on page 17. So as you know, there are Democrats, there are Republicans, and then there are swing voters. We are seeing that swing voters are slowly dwindling in our polarized environment, but we do have an advantage in municipal elections, which is that swing voters are more likely to lean Democratic. This is a time when you are able to reach out to independent or other voters and possibly can convince them to vote in your favor. There are some groups of people that you will never need to speak to. That is going to include low voting Democrats, low voting swing voters, and low voting Republicans, in addition to sometimes voting Republicans and high voting Republicans. So what that leaves you with is 4 blocks of people that you can reach out to. The first is going to be high voting Democrats that always vote Democrat. These are people you don't necessarily need to speak to. They turn out every election and they always vote for Democrats. What they provide to you in your campaign is the energy, the time, and the volunteers that you need to accomplish your goals. So instead of trying to convince them to vote for you, you should encourage them to volunteer for you instead. The second is sometimes voting Democrats. They vote Democratic, but they only vote time to time. So your job is not only to encourage them to get to the polls, but to vote for you. And the way that you do that is through GOTV, which is also called Get Out the Vote. Get Out the Vote is the last 2 to 3 weeks leading up to the election. This is when you rally your base, and you typically will want to use your high voting Democrats to go out and remind your sometimes voting Democrats, are you going to be voting on election day? A great way to get people to get out and vote if they are lazy Democrats is to have them make a plan. So when are you going to vote? How are you getting to the polls? Who are you taking to the polls with you? If they're choosing to vote by mail, did you apply for your ballot? When did you receive your ballot? How are you returning your ballot, etc. So when you help them make a concrete plan, they are statistically more likely to follow through with it. This is a great way to encourage people to make that plan. They will follow through with consistent reminders. This leaves you with 2 blocks of people left, which are our swing voters. The first is high voting swing voters. They vote frequently, but they vote across the ticket. And the second is sometimes voting swing voters. These 2 groups are what we call persuasion tiers. So depending on how frequently they vote, you're going to want to persuade them more or less. So this means that you'll want to door knock them, you will want to contact them frequently and encourage them to vote in your favor and to get to the polls. Once you've identified all of these groups of people that you intend to reach out to, the messaging that you intend to reach out to them with, and what time you intend to reach out to them during the course of your campaign, this is when you can develop your field plan. For most of you, this is going to be incredibly basic, and our most important advice for you is to try to knock every door that you can. You most likely live in a district where this is highly possible. So when you go out and knock doors, you want to make sure that you're not knocking on doors that you don't need to speak to, but to the people you know are kind of hesitant about voting in your favor or turning out. So when you do door knocking, it's great to bring literature with you. It's great to rally some volunteers to join you. This is probably the best way to have a presence in the community. Another great option for municipal level races or for close races is factoring in vote by mail. Vote by mail is a great way to bank votes. So by banking votes, that means that once someone has returned their ballot and it's been received by the County Board of Elections, you can say, all right, this person has already voted for me. Now I need X amount of votes to win. This is a great way to make sure that you are focusing on the people that have yet to vote instead of spreading your resources too thin on people that have already voted. This is where Vote Builder is incredibly helpful because it'll tell you this stuff in real time. It'll tell you if someone has applied, if they've received the ballot, if they've returned the ballot, and if it's been processed by the County Board of Elections. This is a way that you can sort them out. Likewise, you can always ask the voters. So, sometimes people do lie, so Vote Builder is really helpful in this respect. In addition to your door knocking, you might do some phone calls, you might do some postcards. Door knocking is definitely the best option for you. There might be some other needs for your campaign. One of them would be yard signs. So as you know, yard signs do not vote, so we would encourage you to spend sparingly. You likely would only need 25 to 50 signs for a municipal race. You might want to consider getting a union bug depending on the scale of your race and if that is important. Additionally, one thing to keep in mind with yard signs is that it's more impactful if they are posted in private yards as opposed to public right-of-ways. So when you post them on public right-of-ways, you want to be cognitive of local ordinances. Are they allowed to be placed, and at what time are they allowed to be placed? Lastly, for those of you who want a cost-effective strategy, we'd encourage you to not turn your nose up at hand-painted signs. So an option is going to your local county committee and asking if they have leftover signs. I'm sure that they do, and they'd love to give them to you. You can turn them inside out. You can paint them, spray paint them, whatever you'd like. It's a great option, and it's really cost-effective. If you decide that you want to get all these different kinds of literature and it costs more than you anticipated, you might need to ask for money. If you plan to ask for money from people, you will need to register for a PAC, also known as a Political Action Committee. You want to think critically before you do this, because a PAC does require some additional work. You have to be in compliance with campaign finance laws that does require other people to make sure that these rules are being followed. So you might want to raise an additional $50 to $500 for your campaign. And there are two ways that you could go about this, which is asking people to contribute at the door, or to have a fundraising event where someone aside from the candidate makes an ask toward the end of the event. Once we get close to election day, you're going to make your plan for GOTV, also known as Get Out the Vote. And that'll include really the last prior to election day, when your county committee might have literature for top of the ticket for municipal candidates. So it might include district judges, and it will promote the ticket. So you might want to reach out to them to see what their plans are so that you can coordinate with passing out literature or something to that nature. But you will want to make sure that you are passing out literature and reaching out to voters quite consistently in the last 2 weeks leading up to the election. On election day, you will want to make sure that you cover all of the polling locations in your district with yard signs. And you will want to see if you can get people to greet voters at the polls on election day. As a reminder, for those of you that plan to run, standing outside the polls and having not campaigned May and November is a mistake. It will not substitute for organizing in the community, and it likely will not be enough to persuade voters in the numbers that you need to win. So you want to ensure that if you intend to stand outside the polls, you know that you also put in the work between May and November for your campaign. If you have people standing outside the polls, make sure that they're 10 feet away from the polling location. That is law. And you want to make sure that you possibly get them snacks or water, and make sure that they are relieved throughout the day, likewise to yourself, because it will be a long day. Once election day is over, there are a few things you need to do cleanup wise. You need to remove all your yard signs from polling locations. You need to remove them from public right-of-ways and in private yards. You'll want to make sure that you are thanking your volunteers often, writing handwritten thank you cards, and providing snacks for different parties with small snacks there if that works as well. And then if you did ask for money from donors, you want to make sure that you thank them as well with handwritten note cards. Depending on the status of your race, if you won, if you lost, there are still a few more things you might want to do, which is continually thank your volunteers, your campaign members, your friends, your family, and then also your opponent. So if you did lose, it might be a good idea to call them, send them a note card congratulating them on a race well run, and discussing how you can collaborate with them throughout the upcoming term, which is a great way to stay relevant. And that concludes my portion for how to win. I'm just going to look through the chat real quick here to see what questions I have. All right, Betsy, so we had a question from Ann Demo for petitions, which is, for a school board candidate, what would you write in that city, borough, township category?
In your personal okay. If it's your personal information, you
Oh, no,
would,
I was actually looking at the sample petition on, I guess, I can't see what page it's on. Would you put the school board, school district, or city,
Yes.
borough, or township?
Yes, thank you for that. So it's information about the office for which you're petitioning. So you would put the name of the school district. That's a great question. Yeah. So Laura Shadle lives in the borough of Bellefonte, but she would put down that her district that she's running in is Centre County, because she's running for the entire county. That's a great point. And any of these particular questions, I know Ann Demo lives in Centre County. We have contact information, so you can reach out and talk to me. You can also reach out to fellow, say, school board who are sitting elected officials already. In fact, I noticed that we have the famous Dan Duffy, who just joined our chat group. He is a sitting elected school board official in the State College Area School District. He's going to be talking with us in a few minutes. So, yeah. So I want to say, before I go into what we're actually going to, remember, we're going to backtrack and we're going to talk about the most important question, which is, why am I running, making that decision? I'm going to give it a little bit of a quick go over, but the reason we have Dan Duffy here, and we'll have a couple of other people joining our group, is so that you can ask those questions about maybe why they ran, and they'll give you some pointers on that. I just want to catch up. One of the great advantages of working with Ava, who's really remarkable, and tag teaming like this, is we get to see things that Ava said, and I want to make a point on that, and she does the same with me. So I first want to say thank you. Anybody who's still sitting here, you are heroes of the democratic process. This is a pile of information, right? It's a lot of information. I do want to iterate that everything that we have said is in the handbook that we have shared with you. In fact, in many cases, that's what I'm using as my speaking notes. I also want to mention that on the front page of your handbook, you don't have to look at it now, there is a reference to this book, which has been my Bible for a number of years. It was put out by the Wellstone Foundation. The Wellstone Foundation is no longer in existence. It's been taken over by a group called Power, or probably Power. They run excellent candidate training. What's encompassed in this book was relayed in a 2-day conference. You know, I've attended this 2 days long conference. So if you want more information, get it at a source like this. This source, by the way, is completely available for download on the web, and I have that link in your packet. I also want to emphasize that despite all this information, really what campaigning is all about, especially in what we call retail campaigning, where it's actually possible for you to knock on almost every single door in your district. This does not apply to Sierra Street's campaign, which is statewide, but for local campaigns, get the knack of the knock. It's really about knocking on your doors. And the one story I'd like to tell here is somebody who ran for council in our borough of Bellefonte. Several years ago, I sat down with somebody before Ava, someone named Jared DeLoof, and we essentially gave the 1 hour sort of presentation of what we've done now in 2 hours. And at the end of that presentation of getting a kitchen cabinet and coming up with a motto, or your slogan and running a door knocking campaign, he kind of shrugged his shoulders and he said, I'm just going to knock on all the doors. And guess what? He did, and he won. He knocked on Republican, Independent, Democrats, and anyway. So that's really the essence of it, is just to get out there, get your message out there. Also want to mention that we got to add this in our handbook, Ava, more prominently, that any literature that you produce or any yard sign, it must have a financial disclaimer on it, or a financial, attribution on it. It must say paid for by, and it can either say literally the candidate if you're handing out literature. If you have a political action committee, it must say the name of that political action committee. Laura Shadle's running for jury commissioner. Her political action committee is called Friends of Laura Shadle. So anything written that you put out must have that attribution on it. If you happen to send as an attachment a flyer that you've put out for some campaign event, but you're sending it in an email and you think somebody might be printing that out and posting it, make sure in any electronic lit that you produce, it says paid for by the candidate or paid for by Friends of Laura Shadle or whatever. Another thing that first-time candidates maybe find as a surprise is that the county party, the Democratic County Party, and there is one in every single county in Pennsylvania and probably across the nation, the Democrats will not pay for your campaign. I've had any number of candidates say, well, how much money can I get from the Democrats? No, you are responsible for raising the money. What the Center County Democrats can do, because we now have a pretty well-established group of volunteers and we have some fundraising going on, is we can now pay for door hangers that apply or benefit, say, the entire slate of candidates in a race. So this upcoming race, we will have candidates who are running at this statewide judicial race. We will have candidates running at the countywide county races. That would include jury commissioner and district attorney. But you know what? We can't necessarily put school board on because we have 6 different school boards in the county of Center. So the same is going to include anyway, but we do spend money to help a little bit, but we cannot fund your campaign. I also want to mention that, in case you missed it, the word elevator speech is called an elevator speech because you ride in an elevator for about 30 seconds. So it's got to be short and fast. I want to emphasize the personal story that Ava talked about, and we have actually in our Why Am I Running section, we mentioned personal stories are really strong. Facts bounce off, but your personal story is why you're running, and it's what you should always lead with, so on. Okay. And Greg Stewart, our chair, reminds me that I spoke about nomination papers as a way to get on a ballot. Those can only be filed by candidates who are listed as independent or a particular party like the Green Party. So my mistake there, we'll have to change it in the booklet. Okay, and welcome to Eve Brown, who joined, and I just noticed that, but I think we weren't here initially, so we didn't say hi to you, so welcome. Now I want to go talk briefly about why am I running, and then we're going to turn it over to sitting candidates who are going to offer their stories and encouragement. So the decision process, really, really important. A lot of you are here because we've just come off of a tumultuous 4 years, we've had a very inspiring election, and you are inspired to step forward and make your contribution to this democratic process. Awesome, right? I'm touching my heart. Another excellent reason for running is you are bringing a heretofore unrepresented voice in that elected body. So Board of Supervisors or school board, we need people of color. We need people from the LGBT community. We need people who are being rehabilitated from prison, and that's something Maddie King works on. They are all voices in our community. It makes a stronger elected body when we represent our community. So we are looking for diversity. And need I mention women? We've been working for women, for a long time, but we are now we as Democrats are realizing we need to actively recruit for an extremely diverse set of candidates, sorry. You also might be running because you want to learn a different skill, whatever. So is it the right time to run? Do you have young kids? Are you a stay-at-home parent because of COVID? Is your partner taking on a new responsibility at work? Are you taking on a new responsibility at work? Did you retire? That, so all of those time constraints. Is it the right office? Should I run for school board? Should I run for supervisor? I don't know. Like, I want to do something. So one of the best ways to find out which office is right for you is to do what probably a lot of you have done already. Watch your council meetings. Go to a council meeting. Go to a school board meeting. In some counties or areas, the meetings are televised, and you can look at those later. But there's nothing like attending a meeting, or in this day, attending a Zoom meeting, finding out. And I would add the caveat, if you attend a board meeting of any sort, make sure that you read all of the material that goes into that, because you will get an idea of not only the amount of time you need to put in, but also of the new set of skills that you'll be learning. It does take a while. There is a learning curve. The amount of time I put in now after being on a supervisor for 3 years is much different from the amount of time I put in that first year. So I'm kind of over that, some of that learning hump. Okay, other things to consider. If you're running in a competitive race, do you have tough skin? Okay. If it's a competitive race and you need to raise money, do I feel comfortable asking people for money? Do I have friends who will host house parties? Let's see. And do you have the time, one, to raise money? Do you have the time to knock doors? What we're talking about here really is one part of the process of being an elected official, and that is sort of the job interview. The job interview part is running for office. It's your campaign. And that takes a certain set of skills, and it takes a certain amount of commitment of time. Okay, the other thing that's part and parcel to this becoming an elected official, we don't talk about it here, that's actual service time. So you actually want to know how much time each week is that going to entail? What kinds of issues am I going to be involved with? And again, just do a little bit of research on that. And attending meetings is one of the best ways to go. So once you've decided, you want to make sure absolutely that you have a frank, open, extended conversation with your partner, with your family. I once managed a school board race where there was a lot of tension between husband and wife, and I very firmly suggested that that particular candidate not run at that particular time. In fact, I said I would not run your campaign anymore. They just had some kinks. They needed to make the campaign something that they were working on as a family. You want to have this similar discussion with a boss, maybe a coworker, especially if you work very closely with somebody and you might want to leave for a noontime meeting once you're elected, or while you're running, you might want to leave a little bit early to get out in the doors. And talk to friends. Try it on for size. You think I would make a good school board director? Do you think I would make a good Commonwealth court judge? You know me? What do you think? Key takeaways from this. Nobody has answered these questions that I've just posed for, in the last 5 minutes, but you. So you really need to make that decision. Look at yourself in the mirror and, try this job on for size. It's also, I give you total permission. It's also okay to not be 100% sure when you step in that campaign arena. There's nothing wrong with stepping in, trying it on for size, realizing it doesn't work. As I told my daughters when they were growing up, there's no such thing as quitting viola lessons. But if viola lessons are not right for you, it's okay to stop them and go on to something else. So I give you permission as a candidate, potential candidate, to make that decision even once you've entered the race. And it's okay to not want to run now. And it's okay to not want to run ever. It has to work for you. If you don't want to run now, 2 years, every 2 years, every 4 years, there's an opportunity. And another well-kept secret of being involved in the local level are something at the municipal level called ABCs, stands for authorities, boards, and commissions or committees. So we have the water authority in the State College area, and we have the sewer authority. Sewer authority determines the growth boundary, and we're all concerned about growth boundary. There's also the planning commission, a great training ground and a great way to impact, training ground for supervisor and way to impact your community, whether you never run for supervisor or council, and so on. Again, I want to emphasize personal story. It's one of many exercises that we have for you if you are still exploring this huge step. We have those in our handbook that accompanies this. So with that, oh, and I also want to point out that the stuff that Ava was talking about super Dems that you don't need, that if you're running in the general campaign that you don't need to reach out to, that bit of advice does not apply if you're running in the primary and you have a contested primary. So it certainly would not apply to Sierra Street's position. And here in Center County, if we had two people running to be judge of the Commonwealth Court or Common Pleas Court, then two Democrats, they would both want to be knocking on super Democrat doors. So, okay, with that, I'm going to welcome our guests. And I'm going to ask that you each give a brief, sort of a brief introductory mark, and that would be Paul Takak. Wave your hand, Paul. And Dan, where's Dan Duffy? Oh, and is Dan still on?
I'm here.
Oh, Dan, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
That's okay. It's good to see Paul. It's good to see Paul in person. I've just seen him mostly as a line on Facebook, so it's kind of cool
awesome.
to see a real person.
So I'm going to call on Dan Duffy first, and then we'll call on Paul Takak. So give us just a brief introduction of who you are, your office, and
Amy Bader's here too, I think.
Amy, where's Amy? Oh, Amy, hey, Amy, I didn't see you.
Just arrived, I think.
So we'll start with Dan, then we'll go to Amy. So we'll stick with school board, and then we'll go to Paul Takak. So just quickly who you are, and then questions come up. Yeah.
Sure. I just talk about how I got into this, and how I crossed the thresholds that you've been describing in terms of making this decision.
Sure.
Betsy will tell you that I didn't jump into this like just off the cuff, so to speak. That it took a lot of conversations with Betsy about this, about politics, and about the importance of local government and the value of people stepping up. And I'm so glad to see so many individuals, considering throwing their hat in the ring. This is really powerful. And you can't find a better advocate than Betsy. She is so cool. Every time, we haven't been together, of course, because of COVID in a long time, but I would be giving Betsy a big hug if I were around right now. She is really top notch and brings a lot of experience from Southeast Pennsylvania and from Montgomery County to what we're doing. It's really valuable to have this kind of experience. But I got into this. I was a school psychologist for 35, 40 years in the public schools, did a variety of different things, and retired. And I was still interested in public ed. And I went to a meeting that was sponsored by the school district, and the superintendent and actually one of the board members, we now have Dave Hutchinson, approached me and said, "Do you want to run for school board?" And I was then retired maybe a year and a half. And it wasn't the first thing I wanted to do because I wanted to walk away and take a break. But over the following 3 to 5 months, 6 months, chatting with Betsy and talking with some of the board members, I came to realize it was something where I could be of help, could be of assistance. What I have to tell you, one of the things that Betsy talked about back then was that when you talk about government, that these line level slots, whether it's for somebody at the county level, or if it's in a borough council job, or if it's a school board member role or whatever, they're the fundamental basic foundations for what happens in terms of our government. And one should have great respect for that and understand that. And the way in which it works in Pennsylvania, it's not necessarily a partisan thing, because you can cross file, you can be you can run as a Democrat or Republicans, and so there's a recognition on the part of the government, at least up until now, that this is not a partisan role, that your contribution to government, can kind of happen at the grassroots level. It's so important. But I want to qualify that also by saying that when you wind up, and I hope it would to those of you who are interested, should you essentially serve as a school board member, you'll be asked, and this is so important in this era, they'll be asked to take an oath of office in which you commit to supporting our Constitution, supporting and defending our Constitution. I can't think in my life, and I'm 70 years old, of a moment in time that I have felt any more important than now to support our Constitution. And right now, things are hanging in the balance. And it takes even people at the line level, like school board members, to really give that voice to the situation in which we find ourselves. And among the things the school board members decide upon are things like curriculum and about social studies and about civics and things like that. I can't think of a more important time to be involved. So anyway, I don't want to take up too much time, but Betsy, thank you for the opportunity to speak about this stuff. This is so important.
And thanks for sharing it, Dan. Yeah, I'm going to have Amy jump on real quick.
Hi,
Amy Bader.
I ran at the same time as Dan, so he and I are both serving the beginning of our second term. So we're just wrapped up our 5th year on school board, which doesn't seem like it was that long ago. It went pretty quickly. For the last year and a half or so, I've been serving also as vice president of the board. So I work with Amber Concepcion, our president, to collaborate with the superintendent to kind of guide the agenda setting and what we do, be a conduit between other board members and the administration. I got into running because I had kids, I had young kids and one coming up into the high school. And so a friend who grew up here and went to school here kind of said, hey, are you going to go see the tour at the old high school before the new one was built? And I said, sure. I wanted to get away from my little kids, so I dumped them off with my husband and went to this meeting and was pretty appalled by what I saw in terms of the conditions of the former high school. So I got involved in Friends of State High and met Betsy that way and did some canvassing and kind of got motivated to be an activist in the school system. Sorry, for the new high school. So, Tigger, stop. My dog is behind me, he's hiding behind the background. And then once I did that, there were not a lot of people running at that time, and Amber was an old friend of mine and convinced me that I would be helpful in being in that role. I went to public ed as a kid, always believed in public ed, and so decided it would be good for me. Yeah, and so I ran, and then since then have run for a second term. I think that school board in particular is a unique role. We're one of the top 5 employers in our community. We might even be 3rd or 4th. I don't know. We're up there in the top 10 at least. In employers in the community, our budget is bigger than the counties. So currently our annual budget is in the $150 to $160 million range of what we administer. That's not said to be scary. We have a great business manager who does a lot of the work of coming up with that budget. And our job is mostly to critique it and approve it. But it gives you a sense of the scope of what's on the plate for school board members at State College. And we do run the gamut, as Dan said, of things that we deal with. So there's big chunks of the financial things. There are mandates from the state and the federal government that we have to ensure that are being addressed. But then there are also, curriculum and other issues. You've probably heard a lot about equity lately in the school district as an issue that's long been not addressed. Our community is generally pretty affluent and thought to be doing pretty well, but because of that, the needs of some of our more challenged students and families really haven't been met in the past, in my opinion. So we've been making some really big efforts in the last 5 years to do more in that vein, and there's still work to be done there. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amy. And I know there are a lot of questions that are going to come up. And one thing that we always get to at the end is at least getting a chance to talk about the impact that you made, or what was the most challenging thing you did. So we'll get to that. I want to have Paul jump in and tell us a little bit about himself. And then Paul, if you could also just segue right into your story about your run, because
Okay.
you did not run in the typical campaign, and it really shows the impact of door knocking.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. I'll actually reverse what I was going to say, but thank you. Hi, everybody. Paul Takak. I am a member. I'm a council member in College Township. So sort of the eastern edge, if you think the mall and down South Atherton and that area, College Township. I ran in 2019, so just completed my first full year last year. Prior to that, I've spent, and I still do, over 20 years in business. I work for Apple with education customers all over the state. And I've been involved in local politics off and on, mainly during presidential campaigns. I would always, go out and volunteer and those kind of things, but I wasn't terribly consistent. I was asked to run, and I can talk about the run specifically, but the power of the ask. Betsy always talks about this. Somebody asked me, and I decided to run. And I appreciated it before, but I appreciate it even more now. What Dan was talking about, the basic unit of governance, especially in the state of Pennsylvania, is the townships, the municipalities. And it's really all the stuff that people care about. I mean, not only it's police and fire services. I sit on the Council of Governments Public Safety Committee. We talk about EMS, we talk about the vaccine rollout, we talk about fire services, we have police services fall under our purview. We talk about growth and local taxes and the local business economy and all of those things. It's really, it's where the rubber meets the road in terms of government, is really what impacts you, is what happens at the local level. And it's usually 3 to 5 people in the borough. There's 7, so it's a little bit different, but those are the folks that really impact what happens. And Betsy already mentioned the ABCs, the authorities, boards, and commissions. Hugely important. If you want to know how the system works, or you want to get involved, just fill out an application. We're always looking for folks who have diverse backgrounds to come in and help us with those kind of things. Another really great thing to do is watch the meetings. You can not only just attend them, but CNET, if you're not familiar, cnet1.org. They have meetings that are recorded, all of the meetings. They're chapterized, so you can go through and find things that you're interested in. But watch how government works, because that's really what it is. That is the intro. Shifting over to my race, as I said, I was asked. I didn't run a traditional campaign because in 2019, the primary season, as usual, was in the spring. And there was a candidate who won the primaries and was on the ballot for the general election. Well, in July, I believe, he dropped out. And there was an opening on the ballot. And so I was actually nominated. I was first asked. They asked me before they nominated me, but anyway, that's a whole other story. I was nominated by the party to fill that vacancy on the ballot. So I had a very short window of time to get up to speed. So, it was very strategic in the kinds of things that I did. I needed to get my name out there. I was sort of, as Dan mentioned, I post on social media and I knew, I sort of had a presence, if you will, but people didn't necessarily know my name widely in the township. So I invested in yard signs as an example. Some people will tell you it didn't work, but I thought it worked for me just so people recognize the name. And I tried to knock on every door that I could. And I went in with specific objectives. In my neighborhood, I knocked on every door. I didn't care, Republican, Democrat, independent, whatever. I was knocking on those doors because I was their neighbor. And I wanted them to know that I was aware of the things that were on the burner that would affect them. And then I tried to knock on as many doors in the township as I could. I leveraged the resources. We have some amazing volunteers with the Democratic Party who helped me out tremendously. And turns out I ended up winning. There were 5 people running for 3 seats. And I was within 100 votes of the highest vote getter and was ahead of the 4th place person by almost 750 votes. So ended up winning fairly handily and displaced the then chair of the College Township Council. So it's been a pretty successful year.
Yeah, quite a remarkable race. And I thank you, Paul, for sharing that part of it, because the leather meeting the floor, whatever that expression.
The rubber.
Rubber in the road.
I
Shoe
know, Rob, thank
leather,
you. I
they
forget
all
those
work.
metaphors. Yeah, it was great. At this point, I'd say I'm looking in the chat box, or Ava, look in the chat box, or anybody want to just call out and or wave your hand, raise it, and ask questions. You know, I wish we were all in 3 dimension, but we're in the same room, but we're 2 dimensions. So I see Ann. Oh, I see Ann's hand. And Eve, did you raise your hand also? Or no? Okay, so maybe later. Okay. So Ann, go ahead. Ask away. Ann Demo.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Amy and Dan, I am so called based on the Constitution, and then also kind of serving SCASD. I used to teach at Penn State, but then because of life circumstances had to leave. And then I actually started working as a para because the special education program like transformed our life, and I wanted to find a way to give back. And so I guess I'm wondering, how did you choose school board as your way to give back? Well, Dan, you've already kind of given how many years, but how did you choose that instead of, you know, for example, serving on like the equity committees in the community? So, I mean, you can serve in so many ways. I guess I'm wondering about that decision calculus to go the board route for service, if you're going to serve somehow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. Amy, you want to go first? I don't get ahead
I'll
of
put you on mute. Yeah, and for me, I guess my kids were, so I have a senior graduating now, and I have twins in the middle level, and all my kids have invisible disabilities. And admittedly, compared to what most people think about, you might characterize them as mild. So I have a kid with dyslexia, and I've got 2 kids with different kinds of ADHD. And I also have one kid who's what would be considered twice exceptional. So she's gifted, but also has a learning disability. And so, and I have several nieces and nephews that all fall in that category too. So that was a personal issue of mine, just like you perhaps have one for you and your family, and experience that drives you to care about whether those kids get what they should get. And so that was definitely part of it for me, that education was the place for me to serve, because I felt like there were ideas and thoughts I could offer about what I knew in that field. I did learn quickly, and I did already know going into it, that you can't have a one agenda thing. You're one of 9 on a team. And so you're not going to be able to go in and say, hey, I want this program, or I want you to use this resource or whatever. But, you know, through the relationships that you build, you certainly do gain some opportunities to broaden someone's horizons or make them question their thought processes. And so that's a lot, I think, of where you make a difference. So certainly what PSBA, the State School Board Association, will tell you is that your legacy is policy. You know, the policies that you put in place are really your role in how you make change. And so the big equity policy that we've all worked on and passed recently, and that we'll soon be hopefully revamping, that's a big thing about policy. But I also do think the part that people don't talk about is that the relationships that you build is where you also have sway on school board. And I don't know, if I can't speak to whether that's the same on a municipal board. You know, I have opportunities to have conversations with administrators about different philosophies about education, or social emotional learning, or behavioral management, or different things like that. And having built positive relationships over time, that gives me a chance to have discussions about kind of those ideas. And I think that you can have a big influence in that way.
Yeah.
You certainly can never demand it, but I think you have the opportunity to, yeah, to share things with people and do that. So.
Thanks,
And
Amy. Yeah.
I just want to reinforce and just agree with what Amy just described. I mean, it really does open a lot of opportunities, and mostly in many ways, just as Amy suggested, through these sidebar separate conversations that you have with administration, with other board members. I mean, frankly, there are 9 of us. So one person doesn't carry that much authority. You know, you're really sharing it with others. And so it requires collaboration. It requires an open mind in many ways, an opportunity to learn. Now, if you're coming from your role as a paraprofessional, you've already kind of immersed yourself in the school district. You know what it's like to be there day to day, which was my experience too. That's why I came into it, was to kind of be a voice for the way things, at least when I was working, the way things worked. But as Amy said, it's really about, well, policy's big, about having a footprint, having, you know, having a say about things that endure, that represent your legacy. But it's also about these conversations over time through which you build consensus and build kind of a shared view of where the district should be going. And so all those things seem to be really true about it. I'm really glad that you're considering this, and I think it's valuable to have people have that experience, particularly firsthand experience with our school district, to come in and consider and participating in all this.
And Paul, I'll have you jump in. And obviously, you're not deciding between school board and council, but maybe a little bit of thinking about why you chose council.
I think it's really suited to my background as well. Again, I'm in my role, being a generalist really helps. You know, if we're deciding about zoning issues, or we're talking about oak wilt with trees, or, you know, chickens most recently, right? I mean, it can be anything. And I'm naturally a very curious person, and I like to learn a lot. But also my business background really lends itself to what Dan was just talking about in terms of collaboration. We always try to get to a 5-0 if we can. This isn't hyper partisan politics at the local level. We may come at it from different philosophical backgrounds, but we always try and end up with making the decision that's best for the community. And I will say also that I'm appreciative of the fact that very often we end up at a better place than any one of us individually was at the beginning. And so it's that process. And I think, you know, council, it's an investment in time. Unlike the school board, it's actually a paid position. It doesn't pay a lot, I will tell you. It's a couple of bucks an hour if you work it all out, but it really does impact. So I feel for me, that really made sense. Even though my background is in educational technology, I've worked for 20 years with an education company. I just really feel like council was the right choice for me. It's very personal.
Yeah, awesome. Are there any other questions at large? And if not, I also like to ask, somebody actually asked it at the last training of
We
all
actually have
the,
a hand up, Betsy.
oh, who has a hand up? Sorry.
Eve, I believe.
Oh, Eve, you did have a hand up. Sorry about that.
My question is,
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Yeah.
what recommendations you maybe would have for someone who has accessibility challenges and is very passionate about trying to make the community more accessible, and that when it comes to the door-to-door aspect of campaigning, because that's part of what my challenge would be.
That's a beautiful question. I can answer that not from a personal experience, but I know someone who has gone through it. Is there anyone who has accessibility challenges that has a very personal story? Okay. Thank you for that question. We have somebody currently on Borough Council who is mobility challenged. The borough is full of sidewalks, which is fortunate, but there are also cracks in sidewalks and there's steps up to doors. She door knocked with a friend. So they made their rounds together, and he would go up to the door if the door was not accessible and knock and ask for the voter to come out and have a conversation. And years ago, there was a similar situation in Montgomery County where I was, and we set up a very similar buddy system. That particular thing in Montgomery County was in a more rural area, so it was a little bit harder because driveways were longer. But it is critical that. Thank you for that question. It is critical for all of us to reach out, and as Biden said, sometimes we need a hand, and sometimes we extend a hand because we need to make everything accessible and welcoming to everyone. So thank you for that. Go ahead, Eve.
When I ran, well, both times I ran, and on the off years when I wasn't running, because school board alternates every 2 years, there's 4 or 5 slots open. Center County Dems were great about taking our literature. Like, as long as we got literature to them, they put it in all their stuff to drop everywhere. When we would door knock, we distributed literature for, it's not quite the same as talking to people, but we distributed at least literature for all the other candidates. The borough Dems also are pretty engaged and active, and they were very supportive of putting out information, making sure we were included in all their literature, making sure our literature was included in all their drop stuff. So there is at least a pretty decent infrastructure to try and support you and at least get your name and your picture and all those things out there. And then participating in some of the other venues like the League of Women Voters debate. CNET usually does interviews of all the candidates. So those are at least accessible ways that hopefully you can, get your vision out to the voting public as well.
Thank you for that. I'd like to also bring up a question that was asked at one of our first trainings. Patton Township has I was going to say a young Black woman. She's a little bit younger than me. So a young Black woman sitting on our board, and we have a person of color running in Ferguson Township. I hope. I didn't see her in a training. But my friend on Patton Township, a person of color, asked a question. She's very concerned about door knocking. Patton Township is predominantly white, and she did not feel comfortable knocking on doors where she was a minority. It's life. It's the way things are right now. However, she and I have talked, and I will be walking with her, but a couple of other people who were on that same training reached out through me to her, let me walk with you, let me carry some of your petitions. So it is, again, a way of making a door-to-door conversation more accessible to everybody. Life is what it is, and we need to face these challenges head on and make sure that we're inclusionary. So thank you so much, Eve, for that question.
May I jump in just with an observation about
Sure,
that?
Paul.
Betsy?
Yeah.
We also have, from the Center County Democratic Party, there are precinct captains and
Good point.
vice captains, and they are embedded. They live in their neighborhoods and in their precinct. So I would absolutely, if you were interested in reaching out to folks, reach out to them, because they might know themselves or others who can help guide you around the neighborhood and help you navigate that. They're wonderful. They're volunteer and just a great resource.
And for those of you who don't know, what Paul's referring to is something called a precinct committee person. There are 2 officially elected, it's an elected position, officially elected precinct committee people per precinct. Not all precincts have a full complement of committee people, and not all precinct committee people are equally active in door knocking and helping to carry literature. The way you find out about a precinct committee person is, again, to contact your county Democratic committee. You should be able to get that on a website. And I'm sure the same is true in New York as is in Virginia. Centre County is, we're always getting organized, we're always getting more organized. So we have a list of committee people we have, but as I said, not every precinct has a full complement. So in fact, anybody on this call, if you decide not to run for office, you may be interested in helping out the process in a way. Being a precinct committee person is one of the most critical ways of having an impact.
Hi, Betsy, I have a question. May I ask one, please?
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
So this is for our folks who are on the school board. And so I personally have 3 kids, and I also, of course, I'm a mom. And I work with mental health a lot. So I'm a holistic spiritual healer by my, work. So I see a lot of, kids being very stressed these days. And I mean, I have a teenager at home myself. Is that something a school board position would this kind of a thing be an asset for a school board position? Is that something that helps with that?
And I'll let Dan or Amy jump in there.
Thank you.
I can start. I think it's helpful to have help if you're asking whether your experience or background will make you maybe more helpful, more effective in understanding the needs of kids. Absolutely. I think that it's really important to have your have specialized training in addressing, first understanding the needs of the students that are brought forward, but also in assisting the school district in design of their intervention programs. It is not one where in this role, you don't really get into the details. You don't get responsible. You're not in a position of being responsible for any one individual program. But you get to be sufficiently informed that when you're speaking with administration about the needs of the students or about the structure or organization of the support programs, your understanding helps a lot. So I think that if your question essentially is, does that background help? I would say absolutely, it really does. But also in this era particularly, we are very aware of the impact of the pandemic on the social and emotional lives of our students. So we're tuned into that. And to the extent that we have the opportunity, we're supporting the school district in terms of their work in this area. Amy, I don't want to get ahead of you on that, but.
No, that's okay. Just as decades ago, the revelation came about that kids can't learn if they're hungry, and we instituted school lunch programs and federal programs to support that. We're at a similar turning point in coming to grips with the fact that kids who are dealing with mental health crises and other kinds of crises like that can't learn if those aren't dealt with. So for a long time, education, it was felt that it's not our role to teach morals or any of those kinds of things, and that's changing. It's changing on a national scale. So all the national conferences we've gone to, and even the state conferences the last couple of years, the whole conversation is about equity, but really the foundational basics of equity are about understanding that people come from different kinds of trauma backgrounds, and that impacts how they view and how they function. So, the district has rolled out this whole new social emotional learning stuff at the elementary level. And we're trying to build now into seeing that bubble up through the other grades, trying to bridge what we're doing for older kids as we wait for the effects of all these new efforts at younger ages to help kids cope better. We still struggle a lot with the lack of mental health services in our community. And that's something we've actually been able to collaborate with people, like not Paul directly, but other like, municipal officials through COG and other things. There's been panels about how to improve mental health throughout the whole community. So we have connections there that we potentially get to play a role or have conversations about. We've done a lot of collaborative work with some of the different counseling clinics at the university. So certainly your skills, your knowledge and skills will help you in some areas. There's a whole gamut. Even like Paul said, we learned some things about trees this last year when we were building buildings. So we do run the gamut like any municipality. We talk about money. We talk about weird things like landscaping and solar panels and power and, lots of things. But fundamentally our main job is looking out for kids. So of course their mental health is key.
Right. And don't forget the design of crosswalks, the most effective way
Yes,
to design a crosswalk.
with the right, yeah.
I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about something which never would have occurred to me before doing this work.
Thanks, Amy and Dan. It truly is helpful because, that's been my agenda, because mental health and emotional health of children is so key to me. And I think like you rightly said, a pandemic has been hard on a lot of us, and, kids need to learn properly in a proper environment, and we need to aid them with whatever we can so that they can make a difference in their lives. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you for that question too. And PK, you're in Loudoun County?
Yes, I'm in Loudoun County, Virginia.
In Virginia. Yeah, great. They're lucky to have you.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? We're officially at 3 o'clock or after 3 o'clock, but Ava and I are more than willing to stay on. If anybody has any more questions, that's, we're here now. Those of you who live in Center County, actually, if you live anywhere, the contact information for me and for Ava is on the handbook that Ava emailed to you. You certainly have Ava's email if you didn't get it, and get it. Reach out. I don't have a whole lot of time in the next couple of weeks, but I'm always good for a phone call or an email once I get through some deadline crunches. And I think it's all about bringing as many people across the country as we can to an elected position. And I always like to conclude or say at some point that we all have a voice, and we all use that. We learn how to use that voice. This is an opportunity to extend that voice to a vote. We all have a vote at the ballot box. This is a vote on an elected body that can have real consequences. Paul mentioned some of them. Amy and Dan mentioned, and I would just like to say that in Patton Township right now, as supervisors, we will be dealing with police reform this week. We're looking at no-knock entry. That's huge. We have a sustainability committee that works region-wide that is going to demand reduction in greenhouse gas emissions regionally. That's huge. And we're addressing affordable housing. We need it in Patton Township. Absolutely huge impact. Paul talked about that sense, and Dan and Amy about making a contribution that leaves your legacy, a sort of legacy, that sense of making a difference. And it's because of your vote, your hard work and your vote. So any other questions? If not, we'll say goodbye, and we'll look forward to hearing from you if you do have any additional questions. If anybody else that who wants training, this is our officially last scheduled training session, but if we hear from people in Center County who want a training session, we will put another one up and also advertise for it. So if you want to get on the mailing list from the Center County Democrats, you can go to our website and Google Center County Democratic Committee. And that information is also in the handbook. So thank you all. Thanks for being who you are and attending.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Betsy.
Love
Thank you,
Betsy
Ava.
and
Thank you.
Ava.
Okay.
Take care.
And Paul and Ava are going to stay on. So